Omori is really difficult to get out of your head once the final scene and all of its story setups conclude. It's hard to take your mind off it after seeing the payoffs of all the plot elements the writing so deliberately leaves out of your view. As a conclusive tale, you could walk away from this thing feeling that the central theme and most of its side arcs are reasonably finished. So when I heard that not only does the fan-made mod OMORI Reverie attempt to mimic the original art style but build off of the seemingly untouchable ending from the base game, I was incredibly skeptical. But I was also understanding. Some franchises have the best endings possible already, yet as an audience we can't help but want more, even if not knowing everything was intentional from the writers. It's present in Omori, but it's also present in things like Inception and Watchmen, and you likely know why. Because it's infinitely more fun to speculate and think about what the ending could entail instead of getting straight answers from the story. Often it comes coupled with some frustration, since obviously we don't know exactly what comes next. It's easy to wish for what you're seeing on screen now to be immediately what happened after Sunny's confession at the end of Omori's story. Or perhaps it isn't. Perhaps you don't feel Sunny deserved this kind of forgiveness going in with the knowledge that you now know, and this spectacle is completely unreasonable, but that's kind of the point. People could debate this for hours on end, and being more definitive, shrugging off the ambiguity of the final act would destroy so much of the discussion surrounding the game. And as of this moment, can I say if they managed to navigate this delicate story beat gracefully? Well, I don't know, because all I'm able to glean from Chapter 1's release so far is the smaller, albeit still important details. But one of the first things you'll notice is how good this mod looks. Replicating the art style of your source material is one of the hardest things you can achieve as a fan developer, yet it's something that Reverie does in abundance. Seriously, if I saw this without context, I'd assume it was either an area I never saw in the normal game or just cut content. Enemies both in and out of combat are illustrated or pixelated with all the right weight, colors, and animations that OMOCAT set the standard for with Omori's original release. In fact, if you look at what the developer said in regards to creating this mod, you'll see that faithfulness to the source material was their highest priority. They perfected this in the artwork, but nowhere is their faithfulness to the source material more obvious than in their line-for-line replication of Sweetheart, who talks down to everyone and cackles with all the right weight, snobbishness, and oddly endearing charm of her official counterpart in Omori, which is good because she's not just a boss this time around, she's playable. Having Sweetheart as a party member was definitely a risky move since she's a person that can grate on the player easily. She's obviously easier to deal with as a boss or character that isn't always involved in the story, yet now she's along for the ride. Making fan favorite characters like her and Space Boyfriend be part of the party composition will definitely lead to some interesting opportunities for dialogue though, considering their history, and we do see some of that in Chapter 1. But we also see brand new characters like Doe, who compared to Space Boyfriend and Sweetheart will likely be the voice of reason amongst the crew whenever a scene gets very dialogue intensive. Since Sunny doesn't speak most of the time, having a character like this is very useful for progressing the plot, and I think it's safe to say that Doe will be a big catalyst for story advancement going forward. And considering how these characters look, the story needs to make a lot of advancements because it has tons of explaining to do. Going off of Sunny's appearance in Chapter 1, it seems like these events are taking place outside of the dream world, yet Doe, Sweetheart, and Space Boyfriend all have the blue and purple color scheme we've come to expect from Headspace. This change of scenery will likely change the context of how things play out. Briefly after meeting Doe, you'll square off against a giant boss that's literally just a door. Obviously, this has my full approval. You'll work your way deeper into the metro station, and after a copious amount of bunny fights and some light puzzle solving, you'll happen across the aforementioned Space Boyfriend, who seems lost and displaced in his new environment, which is good a reason as any for him to join your party. The last boss you'll face in Chapter 1 of Reverie is this guy, and provided you're playing on hard, you can be in a real jam. It's here that Sweetheart finally becomes playable, and after defeating the boss, you'll free Doe's twin brother to advance the story, and shortly after that, Chapter 1 ends. And yes, you heard me correctly. There's the inclusion of a hard mode, which I like. Omori has a really interesting emotion-based battle system that doesn't tap all of its potential. Fights in that game can be survived with seldom thought, and it's unlikely you'll purposely inflict sadness on your party to negate blows from enemies at any point. There are already existing hard mode mods for the normal game, and I think they do a decent job of pushing the player in a more tactical direction, but it's convenient that this is just a natural inclusion in Reverie. So after all we've seen and said in this video, what do we make of Reverie? Well, what we're seeing here in this release is a tiny piece of the broader story that'll eventually be given to us, so it's hard to say anything definitive. Original characters like Doe haven't had too much time to develop and grow on the player, but from what I've seen so far, I think aesthetically and work ethic wise, we're seeing all of the right things. The team is committed to making something consistent with what OMOCAT achieved with its initial release, and the original soundtrack is not only abundant, but totally in style. The projected length once it's completely finished is about half of OMORI's runtime, but the lead developer explained that a lot of that time will be spent differently from the original title, such as spending more moments in fights instead of conversations, which I'm not against. I've said before that I'm nervous in regards to how they navigate handling the open-ended ending, but that's not to say they even need to necessarily give us an answer on what happens with Sunny's friends. This could totally just be its own little epilogue that has its own poignant message and theme that it ties up in the end, and I think that's the best expectation to go in with since it's an effective last note that doesn't intrude too much on the original final scene. Development on the next chapter is reportedly going well, and you can keep watching this channel for more news on its eventual arrival.